What's going on, everybody? How you guys doing? This is Ian Robinson, and welcome to another Pixelogic stream. ZBrush stream. How are you guys doing? Today, we have a new stream time. So, I've been streaming at noon to 2 typically every Wednesday, but we had to make some adjustments, and so we hope that this is a better time slot for everyone. Move forward, but this will be the usual time. So if you're used to seeing me stream at noon to 2, it's now going to be 9 to 11. So small time change, not to flip it, but this will stay the consistent time from now on. So welcome in, everybody. What's up, Peter? What's up, kids artists? How you guys doing? So on my screen, real quick, is a 3D print. We partnered up with Formlabs to 3D print that mini tank that you might have seen me actually work on last week's How It's Made. This was the tank that we built together. And so if you guys would like to build this tank together, then definitely feel free to head over to this video. It's about 2.5 hours long, give or take, and we start from scratch all the way through, and I show you exactly how I built it. It's 95% ZModeler, so if you're looking to get into ZModeler, that's the way to go. I'm doing really, really well. How are you doing? Getting ready to do a little bit of sculpting today. Today is not anything super follow along or nothing. Today is just a day we're going to be sculpting something fun. Something fun. Because why not? But if you missed that stream last week, go ahead and pop over there. Give it a look-see, because we're trying to make sure that we create more How It's Made series so that people can come in and get started in ZBrush as quickly as possible. So if that's something that interests you. And also, too, it might be a little hard to see, which is why I actually had this up. But the tank has been printed, and what we're going to be doing is dropping this in the newsletter moving forward. So we have a bi-weekly newsletter that's going to pop up. And let me go ahead and drop that. So if you're not a newsletter, it's completely free, but this is where we're starting to drop assets, we're starting to drop materials, etc., etc. So if that's something that you guys would like to have access to, this is where we're going to drop everything that's primarily I make and some of us here at Maxon. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste that in there real quick in the chat. And now we can go ahead and start the sculpting. What's up, Ryan? How you doing? Been doing good. Been a hot minute since I've been able to catch a stream. Yeah, that's actually part of the reason why we adjusted the switch, is that there was a lot of people who are used to seeing me on Sundays that couldn't make the new time zone. And so we're trying to accommodate everybody, those who like to show up and also newcomers as well. So I'm glad you could be here. That's awesome. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to minimize this. And hopefully there's some Rick and Morty fans out there, because I just woke up this morning and wanted to sculpt a pickle. So I thought that'd be fun. So we're going to do a little bit of sculpting. And also, too, let me know if the music is too loud or anything. I always have music going in the background, but I don't want it to distract from anything that we're doing. So let me get my handy dandy glove on, and let's get a sculpting. Ooh. Yes. All right. So actually, Kyo, hello, how are you today? I'm doing great. How are you doing? Yeah, the tank did come out really awesome. I'm really excited about that tank, really proud of that tank. The print turned out really well. The model turned out great. I'm really excited about it, really excited that we were able to get something made. So music is good, awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and just start getting into it. So right now I just have a basic sphere, nothing too crazy. We're already starting out wild, so we're going to go with the extender. I'm going to just extend this out until we get the rough shape of a pickle. Yeah, that should be fine. Something like that's good. And we'll go ahead and accept that. And then I'm going to be the wild card, and we're just going to go straight to Dynamesh. And boom. The coffee has not kicked in yet, so don't bear with me. Done. Ship it. Whoop. We got a pickle. It's good. Very good. Looking forward to seeing you sculpt and learn new things. Heck yeah. Well, feel free to ask questions too, even if you're not sculpting or following along, or if you're just like curious about something. Ask questions. And then of course, if I can answer them, I will do my best. But then also too, if not, I will point you into a direction in which we can do stuff. So. Okay, let's still go ahead and get this kind of like skull shape This might be a little low resolution, to be honest. Let's start with 64. I went with 40 for some reason. We're gonna start getting the eye sockets in here. We're gonna do the full Pickle Rick rat body. So the face is only half the battle. We're just gonna get this kind of loosey-goosey in here. Nothing too crazy. Get proportions right. All right, sir, how do you stay motivated? Honestly, I love to sculpt things that I enjoy. Fan art is a huge thing for me, especially if I'm hitting kind of a little bit of a rough patch. I definitely will lean really hard on fan art for personal projects. So, and then I'm starting to just kind of watch other artists and get inspiration from other artists and see, you know, what they're doing. Not necessarily how they're doing it or within their style in particular, but more of just like, hey, I wanna make a thing. And I may not know exactly how to go about it, so sometimes it's just nice to see what other artists are doing, and then maybe that will put me on a theme or something that I'm gonna like. So a lot of times it's just all about finding something that intrigues you and then leaning on that pretty hard in the beginning. All right. So we're going to do a pretty rough block out here. Now, of course, he's a pickle. He's a pickle. I also like things that are ridiculous and make me laugh and make me smile. And something as ridiculous as a Pickle Rick is pretty fun. Learn a little bit of rat anatomy too. I think there might be a mouse or rat body in the ZZoo folder that we're going to be pulling from today. If you guys don't know the ZZoo folder, that's in the spotlight here. There's a ZZoo folder and it has all of these Z-sphere base meshes that a lot of artists had put together, and now it ships with ZBrush. So we might find a rat or a mouse somewhere in here. Yep, there's a mouse right here. So this actually might work out really well for us to get something. Is there specifically a rat, though? There's a ram, there's a rattlesnake, there's a rat. Boom, we have a rat one. Perfect. So we're gonna be pulling from that a little bit. Especially if you're like trying to learn animals for the first time, that's a really great place to be. So now you're gonna watch me be super OCD about the size shape of it, but hey. Good morning, Leonard. How you doing? Did I ever do traditional sculpting? Yes, I have done a teeny tiny bit of traditional sculpting, and by that I mean I've taken actual clay and I've made something, but I was never trained in traditional sculpting, and I haven't done it long enough to actually say I can do it. However, when I did play around with some polymer clay, I noticed that my skills in ZBrush kind of kicked in and allowed me to kind of just see what it is actually. Like, I knew what to do, I just wasn't familiar with the medium. So I'm sure if I spent some time, I could probably do a pretty good job figuring it out. So okay, we're gonna draw out Z30 a sphere 32 eye, because I like my eyes to have poles on them. I think that's super important, and it also helps you to kind of see the eye placement. Not everybody's eyes are super straight on. They're usually just kind of offset just a little bit, but they look like they're straight on. Like this straight on, this looks cross-eyed to me. So something like this looks a lot better. There we go, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna separate that. So we're gonna go split hidden. That's under subtools and split. And then now we're gonna go ahead and actually save we need to save this out before I get too far with myself. So we're going to go, where is it? Live streams, Pickle Rick. And then this is the Pickle Rick fan art. How long will it take to learn anatomy? Is anatomy hard? Christopher, great question. Anatomy is yes and no. Is in-depth heavy anatomy difficult? Yes, there's a lot there that you can unpack, but there's this great book called Anatomy for Sculptors that really breaks down into the anatomy into primitives and shapes. So I've been sculpting for a little over 7 years now, and I would say that even now, I am still researching and doing anatomy studies, practicing things that I might not be super good at. Hands are always an issue for me, so I'm always working hard to make sure that I know the hand anatomy a little bit better. Faces too, trying to find likenesses. Sometimes it's a little, that kind of pushes me a little bit more. So every artist has something they're amazing at, and then they have their weakness. So what I learned is when you learn the overall anatomy process and you get the sense of where it is, practice makes permanent. You start getting very comfortable with stuff. And then after a while, you'll start realizing the things you feel like you need to work on the most. And so those are the things that you kind of lean into a little bit harder. So, but what I recommend is practice blockouts, but don't worry about details. Just try things and just kind of really pay attention to how the anatomy structure is. And don't be afraid to share your work and ask for tips, because a lot of times it's just developing the eye to see how the anatomy actually is. Sometimes it's hard for us to actually see it ourselves the first few times, but after a while you get used to it. So there's a lot to learn, and I'd say anatomy is very much a life journey. There are guys who have spent years and years, like almost decades, and they're still learning. And the deeper you go with it, the more anatomy structure there is. So there's a lot. So just take your time with it. What I recommend with practicing anatomy is, maybe don't try human anatomy out the gate. Maybe look at animal anatomy, insect anatomy. While that can get really crazy, and there's whole professions dedicated to just those studies, at the end of the day, when you're sharing your work, a lot of people subconsciously know what a human anatomy looks like, but they may not know how to create it. So for you, it might be best to try like sculpting a dog or a cat, or kind of blocking that stuff out, or a turtle, or like a fish. Just something to get the sense of your eye seeing what anatomy is and looks like. And then when you start doing human anatomy, you'll start of already developing that eye, making it a little bit easier for you to see what's going on. And then the other thing that I really love to preface when it comes to anatomy is that every anatomy, trees, animals, humans, objects, it all measures well against itself. So for example, a human, the size of your hand from your fingertip to your palm is the size of your face. Your forearm length is the size of your shoe. There are things about you that measure against itself. So always get used to blocking out everything all at once, and then start adjusting volume and proportions, and it'll make it a lot easier. If you try to put an arm there and you try to get the arm size just right, but you don't have the rest of the torso, or you don't have the hips or legs, it's all gone, and it's just the arm and like a nub of a chest, you may not be able to measure it correctly to the body you're trying to put it on. So, and then the other thing too is that here in ZBrush, we actually do have, if we come back to our very project page here, we come up to the spotlight. So you hit the comic key, go up to tool. We have a model by Ryan Kingsley, and this is a female anatomy. Let's go to render. This is female anatomy with all the muscles and stuff like that. But if you just remove the breast tissue, for the most part, the muscle anatomy here is very similar from male to female. There's slight differences with male to female, typically shoulders, hips, waist and the breast tissue are the big differences. But everything else, this anatomy tool within that ships with ZBrush will automatically get you started. And you can isolate parts of the body like this and hit solo and see exactly how the pectoral muscle works. So there's a lot here that you could definitely use in your favor. And when you're practicing, you can just come over here, set this up, hit Shift F to spotlight that, bring back your object, and then start sculpting against it. It absolutely is. So it absolutely is. So hopefully that's helpful. Let's see. What else did I miss? Yeah, it's ongoing and never ending. Absolutely. Hello, hello. Good morning. Good morning. You're welcome. You're welcome. Just so you guys know, I only speak English, but I will always Google Translate something. Just so make sure I answer everything as best I can. But you're absolutely welcome. I believe that's what that says. Just want to make sure. Google Translate. You're absolutely welcome. Absolutely welcome. Okay. Is there a realistic? Is it realistic to use a mouse and a keyboard to sculpt? Absolutely not. It is not. It's not realistic. I know 2 people that I've met in the last 7 years that have used a mouse and keyboard, and it's just ZBrush really relies on pressure sensitivity, and even your most basic cheap tablet like XP Pen, I think, has a tablet for like $40 that has pen pressure sensitivity adjustments. I think it has up to 8,000 pressure sensitivity points, which is really basic now. But that's where the strength of ZBrush. So with a mouse, when you click it one time, like I come here and let me just turn up my intensity, and I click, like I'm actually clicking my mouse, and you see here as I click and pull, it's all just like, it's just chunky, right? It's super chunky. But with the same intensity at 100 and the mouse, and the pen, I can actually press and lighten my pen pressure, so I don't have to worry about adjusting the intensity all the time. So it gives you a much better experience when you're working with a pen pressure. So if you have you don't have to go super crazy. I have a Cintiq, I have a basic Wacom Intuos at work. I've played with all of them. At the end of the day, just even the most basic tablet is going to get you started. So no, I would definitely say if you can get away from the mouse, you'll have a much better time with it. Okay, we're going to actually take the curve tube here, and I'm going to start making the skeletal structure of this body, because we're going straight for this Pickle Rick right here. And I want to make the bones, so we're going to go ahead and make the bones on that. Yes, absolutely. Pickle Rick! Absolutely. Boop. All right, there we go. Ooh, that is... What had happened there? This is... Oh my gosh, that's funny. Okay, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. So, we have this curved tube here, and I would like this to be a super straight line. So we're actually going to go up to stroke. We're going to go up to curve, and we're going to say as line, which is a function you can have. So now you can just draw out a single line. I don't have to hit shift or anything. There's that right there. Tap one time, and now we have this line. There we go. And that's one object. I'm going to go ahead and split this off. Split hidden. And we'll call these as bones. And now let's actually take the move tool, and we'll just kind of adjust this. This will be like his spinal cord. I haven't decided if we're going to go super cartoony or if we'll push to some sort of realism. Haven't decided yet, but maybe. All right, let's get the rib cage now. So I'm going to make sure that we go back up the stroke, and then actually let's get the curves tube back. There we go. Over here. Curve tubes, or do I want the curve alpha? I want the curve alpha. Okay, curve alpha, and we're going to get alpha 6. So I want that kind of sharp. the stroke here. So I'm actually going to turn repel off. I don't want repel. I want it to be more bone shape. And then we're going to go to our modifiers. Make sure we turn on our intensity. And we're going to invert this by hitting VF. So we get a little bit of... Actually, yep, go back the other way. Boop, there we go. And now we get something like that. Now that's a little too sharp for my liking. So let's go back up to stroke and let's give it a little bit of bottom thickness with a slight taper. This will be his rib cage. Now it looks like his rib cages are wrapping around this way. But then let's actually go up to the picker. The picker is probably one of the most secret weapons in ZBrush ever. And if you go up to the picker on any of your curve brushes and you choose continuous Z, hopefully you guys can see that right there. What this is going to do is usually when it's set to closest Z or 1C, let's say 1C, what is going to happen is when I draw this out, ZBrush is identifying the very spot that I clicked, and anything after that, it's going to go ahead and draw the rest of the shape according to that first location point. But this one was set to closest Z, which is pretty cool because it is identifying the rest of the body, but it's still, I'm still having little gaps and things on the side here, and I don't want that. So if we go to picker and continuous Z, as I draw, ZBrush will constantly update the exact location of the underlying mesh, even if it's a separate subtool. And so I can actually draw this out, and it's going to perfectly touch the body right where I want it to be. So let's actually make this a little bit bigger, and we're going to come across like this. There we go. Straighten out that spot just a bit. And we'll do this a few times to get that rib cage. We'll make these a little bit different. There we go. And so now it's perfectly hugging the mesh underneath. And if that wasn't good enough, we can actually go up to brush depth, make sure we embed that just a teeny bit, re-update that so that it's touching exactly where we want it to be. Come through, redraw this out, something like that, and something like that. There we go. We can always, like any good curve brush, we can get close enough to the original curve and start drawing out just a little bit more if it's not big enough. Very low volume my voice, or because it shows I'm clipping on my voice. I don't want to go too loud. I could turn it up a bit more, but I don't want to clip too hard. Is it possible to sculpt on UVs using alphas? I wanted to sculpt some text around the cylinder, and I was wondering if that was possible. Thank you. Yes, it absolutely is possible. Let me go ahead and save this, and I'll demonstrate that for you right now. The voice? Okay, voice says I'm clipping on my side, so just make sure it's make sure your the volume's turned up a little bit more. If I yell any louder, it's gonna get bad. Okay, so for sculpting on UVs, let's. I'm gonna grab a sphere here, and we're gonna go ahead actually a cylinder. Let's grab a basic cylinder. Okay, good. All right, so we have a basic cylinder here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to make group by normals. And I'm going to go up to Z plugin, UV master. I'm going to go unwrap with polygroups. And now I have UVs. Okay, and we could check that by we can go down to our UV map and we can see here that we have a delete and a morph UV. Now, I want to be able to sculpt on this and wrap text around it. So the easiest way to do that is actually take our bump here and send this to 0 and hit morph UV. From here, now we have our UVs and we can sculpt on this however we would like to do. So I can actually come in here. Let's actually back this up for a second, give it some resolution. Boop, boop, boop. Right, have a little bit of resolution. Morph UV. And we can see here, I can sculpt on this mesh. So you'll be able to take any alpha that you would want. So let's say I had an alpha here. So let's go standard, drag. Let's take an alpha 19. super intense, draw that out. Morph that back, and now you can see here that I have sculpt information on my mesh. So go ahead and play with that, but that's exactly how you want to do that. So get your UVs, go ahead and hit Morph UV. If you have bump 50 set to default, when you hit Morph UV, the reason why bump 50 is set that way is because when you hit Morph UV, you can see that there's deformation, there's information there. And this is actually to tell the user, hey, you can actually sculpt on this. You can actually come here and sculpt it. And that's why we left it set at bump 50. But you can just set that to 0 and reset that. And now you have that sculpt information. So if you're trying to wrap text, like you were saying, that's how you would go ahead and do that. Slow B Art, what's happening? Howdy, howdy. Voice sounds fine? Cool. Should you try traditional sculpting to start with ZBrush? Actually, you know what? That's partly how I learned. I watched traditional sculptors, and then I tried those techniques in ZBrush because I found watching traditional sculptors on YouTube really satisfying. And at the time I picked up ZBrush, I was still having a hard time watching other artists utilize the program. So I would just watch sculptors sculpt, and then I would try to replicate that as best as I could. So yeah, absolutely that works. You might have to kind of, again, if you're seeing like somebody do clay buildup, for example, like they're putting down clay, just I would say translate it that way. It's like if you see somebody put a strip of clay down and then they're smoothing it and blending it, and then they're kind of cleaning that up. Just note that like that's where you should add clay. So with the clay buildup or the clay brush, which is BCL, and you're adding clay, just think of it that way. Because a lot of traditional sculptors will take strips of clay and then they'll add it exactly where they need it, and then they'll blend it, and then they'll define it or refine it. So that would be the only difference for you. Okay, let's take these lovely bones and let's modify this just a little bit. Bring them up here. So that it makes a little bit more sense. And actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to select this one. I'm going to hide it. I'm going to inflate these. So I'm going to turn off symmetry and recenter this to the exact middle. Hold Control, and I'm going to inflate by grabbing the scale and just pushing this to its limit. Something like that. There we go. Mask these off and invert that mask. And then we're going to take the move brush and we're going to embed these back into the spinal column. It does not have a default hotkey, but you can set one up. If you hold Control Alt and tap one time, that will allow you to add any custom hotkey that you would want. And then from there, you can push something like K. And if it has a hotkey already assigned, which I have K set up to a different thing, you can go ahead and hit OK. And then if you hit K, it'll turn on solo. Then hit K again. Then just come on up to our preferences and go to hotkeys and then just say store. And now that will be like that forever until you change it. And if you want to remove that key, if you go ahead and hold Control Alt and tap and then press delete, that will delete that shortcut. And then you have to store that so that it saves. But yeah, it doesn't come default with one, but you could just set it. All right, let's do a little bit of smoothing on this to get that kind of point set up. That's already looking pretty good. Let me just quickly make sure these bones make sense. Okay. And now we're going to get the hip bones drawn into place. So let's go back with our curve alpha. And we'll draw now the hip bones. Cool. All right. Come here, let's draw this down like such. Okay, tap that so it looks something like this. Now here, I'm going to go ahead and continuously draw around. Something like this. Now actually, this bone is not necessarily going to be tapered in any way. Actually, we'll just mesh that together. Actually, you know what? Let's back this up. I don't want this one to be tapered either. I don't want it that big. Continuously draw this around. We'll end up Dynameshing this together, so I'm not too worried about perfection at the moment. Just shove that in there, and then we'll get that Dynameshed. Yeah, we'll clean this up. I think he has a screw in there, and then we also need to add the backbone. Let me see. Yeah, we need to connect that to the back. Let's bring that curve brush back up. Alright, you know what? Should probably just learn how to do a hip right. You may hear me critique myself very harshly. That's how I improve. Okay. Doopy 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 boop. There we go. That'll work. Shove that in there. Now I'm going to turn on backface mask on the move brush. So that's actually going to be under auto masking, backface mask, brush auto masking, backface mask. It's going to give this a little bit of thickness here. And I'm going to extend this out. And then I have a hotkey short, or not a hotkey, I have a custom menu to turn that on and off quickly. Get that into place. This is where his legs are going to be connected. This is where having a basic understanding of anatomy is really going to help you out, even if it's on a pickle. You just get we're going to focus on getting something that looks like it's going to make sense. And that's half the battle. Push that in a little bit more. It's like that old song, the hip bone is connected to the thigh bone. Yeah, exactly. Pickle anatomy! Yeah. Oh, that's wild. I love it. Okay. And now we're going to get kind of the area for his shoulder, and then we'll be connecting his brain as well. And I want to make sure everything is at least looking like it's in the right placement. So I'm thinking this pickle might be a little too stubby for the length, or his ribs are too high, which actually that's what I'm going to move. Sometimes if things look to be a little off from your reference, then I always recommend adjusting the easiest thing, not the most complicated thing. And in this case, his rib cage would be the easiest thing to adjust. The shape of his head and stuff, none of that really matters. Okay. Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and let's get the shoulder built up a little bit. Get that in there. Just kind of move that in place. This is why I love curve brushes, because you can just manipulate that one curve. Adjust the size and then make that as ever big or small you want. Yes, good vibes. Yeah, they won't teach you. They really won't. No. If you want to learn pickle anatomy, you come to the right place. Okay. And now what I'm going to do to build off of the actual To build off his legs, I'm actually going to add in some temporary bones there that will work, and then we'll build off of it, because parts of his body is fleshy, part of it is muscly, blah blah blah, muscly. We'll just stick with that word. This is what we get at 9 in the morning. Let me get my coffee. Okay, so let's go ahead and block out his legs now. We're going to use simple shapes. I'm always preaching use simple shapes. Don't overcomplicate your life. You don't need to. Just go ahead and grab a primitive shape, something that's going to make sense. Bloop. Put that out there. And then we're going to go ahead and skinny this up. If we block out the whole character, we'll definitely be able to see a lot more. Now, I'm going to put his legs so that they make sense. And here, your torso and the length of your legs, a lot of people will have an even length to upper body to lower body. I do not. I'm very, very long-legged for an individual at 6'4". So I'm going to try to make his legs roughly the length between the lower part of his body and his mouth. That's going to give me my own kind of self-control proportion. So I'm just going to go ahead and stretch this out until it's about that length. Give or take some. And then I'm just going to go ahead and mask off this bottom section. Kind of rotate that a little bit to give a little bit of knee bend. And then we're going to place that. And then we can adjust whenever we need to. Rotate that out a bit. Scale that down. Lift it up a little bit more. There we go. This will be the base of that. Let's actually turn on X for symmetry, and then we're going to mirror and weld on the X, and that's going to allow us to duplicate. Muscular. Jesus. See, that's where I'm at today, guys. That's where I'm at today. But I really love the support. Thanks, guys. The only reason anyone would mod Pickle if they could, which they can't, would be because they could, which they can't. I love it. Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, comics. Good morning, Ian. Now that you're working for Maxon, have you been able to also work on other Maxon programs? Actually, I'm directly a part of the ZBrush team, and it's been a privilege and an honor to be a part of it. So there's a lot of things and stuff and things that you'll have to see when it comes to fruition. But I'm directly on the ZBrush team. All right. Now we have this basic shape here. We're going to get the feet, and we're going to be looking up rat anatomy soon. But for right now, let's actually get an insert sphere. We'll go polysphere, something like this. And we'll stretch that out. We'll go local sim. Whee! Yeah. You know what we're going to do with all my my moments in which I can't speak is we'll hold a pop quiz. What was the word Ian couldn't say that everybody else could? Okay. Let's go ahead and turn backbase mask on real fast. So I have that under brush, backbase mask on, and then we'll lift that up a little bit, giving him just a little bit of a feet padding for now. They'll be human-ish shape, but we'll work on getting a lot of that situated later. So let's actually drop this down to the bottom. I like to try to keep my subtools in a relatively decent order. So I'm actually going to duplicate this, call this the body. Here are the eyes. I'm going to take this real fast. This is now my quote duplicate. Let's say K for solo, which is what we set earlier for that, and I'm just going to turn this into initialize QCube just so that the first subtool always becomes the name of your object. So if for whatever reason you've renamed your object and you hit save and the first subtool changes to what it is, just make sure that you know that the first subtool is the naming convention of a ZTL. So what I tend to do at this point is I actually tend to just put like an object of sorts that don't matter. I'm also gonna save a project file because maybe we'll do a time lapse or something like that video coming forward. So we'll save our history for that. What up, Chris? Let's see, game art. I'm a newbie to ZBrush. I want to learn ZBrush for making high poly for my game assets, but I don't want to go deep into organic stuff. Wanted to know in general, how can I practice ZBrush, or what are some exercises you suggest that I should follow to get good at ZBrush? That's a really great question. So you want to learn ZBrush, but you don't want to go deep into organic stuff. So while a lot of artists use organic sculpting to their benefit, ZBrush has a lot of other abilities too. There's a lot of jewelry artists, there's a lot of hard surface artists, there's a lot of environment artists. So if you're into characters, then it may be kind of hard to avoid anything in the organic sense, since most characters are of organic nature. But if you're trying to practice things, but you don't necessarily want to always sculpt something, then just take a sphere, something like this, you know. Take a sphere, bring it in, and then try other things, you know. Check out the brushes, for example. Like, if you just want to learn the brush palette, for example, grab a sphere. We'll grab this chisel brush here, right? And these are VDMs. And then you could just start, like, practicing, like, oh, that doesn't look good. Okay, that's a low resolution. If I subdivide it a few times, oh, that's looking better. Just play around in the program. That's the first and foremost thing I recommend. Play around in the program, see what works. When something breaks, kind of note that, like, oh, yeah, okay, I broke that. But you just grab a couple brushes, maybe try, you know, this is a curved brush, so you'd actually you can't have geometry on it. But I would say first things first, play around with the program. The other thing too is we have a few different resources you can go to. I'm gonna make this full screen. The first thing is Ask ZBrush. So if you go to YouTube and type in Ask ZBrush and then hard surface, it's going to propagate things that have come up with ZBrush and what is hard surface. Anything with this kind of banner right here that's hashtag Ask ZBrush, that's from us directly, and those are videos that you can look at for that. Ask ZBrush Dynamesh, right? Whatever you're thinking, we have a ton of these videos, and we actually have the playlist with over 500 videos, so you could browse through and check out these videos and see what actually works. We've broken them up into series as well. So here's a playlist, for example, that you could start. That's the first one. For environment, what you could do is head on over to Z Classroom, and I'm actually going to point you there right now so you don't have to go there yourself. But we have a Z Classroom Getting Started series, and then we even have something for like concepts, which covers a little bit more of like environments in nature. So you could actually come over here and check out ZBrush for concepting, which will be really, really helpful. It's a lot of follow-alongs. I do recommend that even if you're going to be an environment artist, it's really helpful to go through this course right here, Getting Started, How to Start in ZBrush. We are in the works of updating Z Classroom to work off of the more recent version of ZBrush. However, all of these tactics work out and teach you everything you need to know about the program within about an hour and a half. But there's also digital sculpting, so you could come in here and start breaking out like how to use references, for example. How do I import reference images? So here's a lot of really good resources, and all of this is free. None of this is paid. You won't have to pay for it. Just come in here and start browsing around and follow along with some of these, and then take the direction you want to go with ZBrush, and you'll just understand the program, and you'll be able to push in that direction. So if you want to do environment, you know, definitely just come in and practice. What I say for environment, if you want to practice environment, I'm going to go ahead and delete all here. I'm going to just insert a plane, something like this. Okay, and so ZBrush is oriented a little bit differently than a lot of other programs. The y-axis is the one that is up and down. So when you bring in a new plane, you're going to have something like this. Just go ahead and rotate this 90 degrees by hitting W for the gizmo. Hold shift and rotate this. And then kind of look above it. And then just start playing it around. You can use ZModeler by hitting BZM and maybe masking out some sections like this. And then pressing and holding the spacebar for QMesh. Grab polygroup and start making building shapes. So you could say like, yeah, I want these here to be like this. This will be my building. You could do multiple spots if you want. Maybe from this one, we actually go a little bit higher in the skyscraper. So you can already start to see how like you can start blocking out cities. Or what's really cool is if we back this up for a second, back it up, subdivide a few times, grab like the clay brush, so it's BCL, and just start maybe sculpting a little bit of like terrain. Just get in here and be like, okay, I'm gonna want mountains here. And if you follow real world concepts, if you like find a location that you want, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna want there to be a river right here, the river that runs through it. So you can start sculpting and then coming through. You can start blocking out stuff. I'm no environment artist, so these are really bad and fast. Really bad and fast maybe examples, but hopefully this gives you the right idea how you can start playing. So a lot of resources, but I say take the time to learn ZBrush first. Don't worry about the artistry. Just take your time coming in and playing with the program. I know a lot of non-artists that are scan data experts where they do photogrammetry or they have cloud point based scans that they personally get the model and then they clean it up and then they send it on over to the riggers and to the animators who then take it from there. So it all depends, but learn the program first. Don't worry about the art, and then from there you could start taking what you know of the program and expanding upon it. So hopefully that's helpful. But definitely those are great places to start. What up, Darren? If I did not say hi, hello, hello. Hey, what's up, B? I'm going to need the fan paste thumbnail from now on, or I'm not clicking on anything. I'm glad to see that that was received well enough. Let's see. Any tips for cloth sculpture? Yes. Actually have a lot of tips. I could run through the gamut, or can give you kind of examples of cloth, but clothing is really fun, really simple. In fact, here I could just cloth sculpture. Let's just get a model. Let's just do it here. I'm going to go ahead and actually save this real fast. Let me save all of the things and stuff I need to save before I change progress. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on this guy. We'll abandon Pickle Rick for a second. Okay, so cloth tips. Once you get your body and your mesh the way you would like it, the easiest way to get cloth in ZBrush is actually do the mass extract. So what I would say is duplicate your model, so something like this, and drop it to the lowest subdivision, or don't have subdivisions. If it's Dynamesh, that's okay too. I'm gonna go ahead and just delete higher, and we're gonna go ahead and solo that out. Now, if I want a t-shirt on this guy, or I want some shorts on this guy, the best thing to do is go ahead and grab the mask lasso, and let's, with symmetry turned on, I'm gonna go ahead and mask something like this. Boop. And we'll get some shorts happening like that. Okay. And this is just one method. I'll show you another method, especially if you have any type of if you have subdivisions like this model has. Make sure that you're not masking the fingers. Boop, mask that section up. Okay. We have a basic mask here. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to Subtool and Extract. And we're going to go thickness of 0. ZBrush automatically gives you thickness of 0.002. And that's fine. It's really cool because when you hit Extract, it's going to give you a little bit of thickness. Actually, I think it's 0.02. Boop. It'll give you some thickness. But as you can see here, that's not quite what I want. But I like to work with cloth with single-sided geometry. So you can either keep the thickness if you want, and if you hit Accept, you'll get double-sided geometry, and that's sculpturable. But for me, again, I like to keep things single-sided. And what that does when you hit Extract is that actually creates a new subtool. So if you're like, I don't like that, you can just delete it, and your mask remains on the model below. Once you go ahead and let's go back to Extract, I'm going to take this to 0 thickness and just hit Extract and then Accept. And now I have something like this. And now to make this officially a pair of shorts that we would like, what I'm going to do is notice how it's masked off in the center, but I can invert that and the edges are now masked. So the edges are not masked. And the reason for that is you can clean up these edges really quickly by going to Deformation, and you can actually polish by features. And now you can see here, if we zoom in, we have this warbly mesh. Go ahead and polish by features. Whoop, and that cleans that right up for you. So that gives you a nicer edge. From here, you can either ZRemesh it to get a little bit better geometry if the geometry is not to your liking. So we can go ahead and go to Geometry, ZRemesher, and let's go ahead and say topology the same. Turn Adapt on, but I want to keep creases because the edges are creased. And then go ahead and say ZRemesh. And that'll give me some cleaner topology right off the gate. From here, now what I can do is I can hit W for the gizmo, press and hold Control, and kind of scale that out a bit. Take the Move brush, which is BMV, and start moving my mesh to give my guy some shorts. So this is a great way to just block out shorts really, really quickly. Maybe smooth that down just a bit and get something. So we can clothe our guy really, really fast. Not a problem, game art. Not a problem. So now we already here. You can go ahead and smooth that down. Okay, smoothie. Boop, boop, boop. Because these aren't super tight. Let's smooth that down just a bit. This guy's a booty. Now, if you would like to see your geometry, even though it's single-sided, but you would like to see the end side, just go down to the bottom on the right-hand side of the tool palette to Display Properties, turn on Double, and now you can see the entire inside. So, and then, again, here, now you're working, now you have this masked out. And you can mask out a character really, really fast. Let's go ahead here. By doing the same thing, we just invert. Now let's give him a t-shirt. Mask this section off. Boop. T-shirt. Right? And same method. Now, let's say, for example, you have all these nice subdivisions, and you're like, actually, my mesh is really clean, especially if you're at work and you're given a base mesh. What we could do is actually use this mesh, because we duplicated it from our original. We can actually drop it to its lowest subdivision, and now let's actually use the Select Lasso. So we'll hold Control-Shift, grab this, go to Select Lasso, and we're actually going to go ahead and break apart the model, say something like this, by clicking the edges. So holding Control-Shift and touching an edge will actually get rid of that edge loop. So, which covers a really quick side tangent. If you were ever working on a model, especially in Dynamesh, and you touched a spot and this happens, that's exactly why. It's because you have Select Lasso. So if you had different poly groups, like for example, if we go this guy right here, invert this, let's make this one this, and you want to select just this poly loop, then use Select Rec and just touch the poly loop, and that will always select the one group every single time. Back to here, let's push that further by going to poly group, auto group. So if I wanted to select this one, I could just select that feature, and I can individually select each time. And that's, again, because the Select Lasso was designed to manipulate edge loops. So that's why that happens. So we can actually break this apart, saying something like, let's grab this guy here, let's grab this here, let's grab this guy right here. And now we'll say, okay, let's go to auto groups. So we're going to go to poly groups, auto groups, give me what I want. I'm going to just select this piece right here and delete hidden the rest. So that's under geometry, modify topology, and delete hidden. And now I have a shirt. Set this right in the middle by turning symmetry off, holding control and scaling this up. Right? This is one of many steps. The other thing we can do too is mask this section off, maybe drag this over here like such. Get a little bit longer of a shirt. And then we can go ahead and ZRemesh this to our liking. So we'll go to geometry, ZRemesh, same, keep creases. Boop, now we have a shirt. Let's say so that's the starting point of it. I have a couple more things. Let's see here. What's the best way to model game pieces that are 28 millimeters, 15 and 10 millimeters, then just model and scale down, or end up with the scale? Actually, modeling miniatures, you want to actually push you want to have fewer details, but you want to have them cut deeper, have them exaggerated a little bit more. So let's say I want this shirt to be tight. What we can do actually is use cloth dynamic, and the cloth dynamic is going to be really cool. So I'm actually going to hide the pants for a second, and I have cloth dynamic here. So let's go to dynamics, and I'm going to pin that to the left. And what we can do is turn off gravity, and we can actually, we have inflate, deflate, contract, and expand. So we can play with these features here by let's saying, okay, let's go ahead and do contract, and let's add collision volume so that I know I'm telling ZBrush, hey, the mesh that I have selected, I want it to collide with anything else that's visible. And I want there to be an inflate of 0.02, which is really small. I'm going to say recalculate. Now what I can do is go ahead and run that simulation, and we have a really tight shirt. So we can actually slow that down. Let's turn gravity back on. Let's slow that down to like, to maybe like a 1. Turn gravity back on. Go ahead. Actually, amount here. Let's go 0.02. Recalculate, and then you can hit escape or enter, and you can make that shirt a lot tighter. And then from here, we can actually expand that forward. I can stretch that down. So, recalculate that. And if you don't want to do that, you can do Control Z. But let's do 0.01. Make it nice and slow. Recalculate, and then run that simulation. And let ZBrush work its magic. And then go ahead and say, yeah, okay, that's tight enough. I like that. That's better. Right? And then we can turn contract off, collision off. And now we can manipulate that mesh. We also have some cloth brushes here. If we go BC for cloth, we have a ton of cloth brushes. So you can go ahead and actually add dimples and ripples and all sorts of stuff to your mesh if you would like. So it's fun stuff. Now, if you wanted to do a cape, yeah, the t-shirt became a really did. Now let's say if you wanted to do like some sort of cape or some sort of gown to wrap around your character, then what we can do, the simplest way I would approach any type of like blanket or shroud or cape, is to take a plane, something like this, turn that around so the normals are facing in the direction you want. In this case, I want the direction of my normals to be here. I'm going to go ahead, and there are 2 ways you can manipulate this the way you would want it to be. So I'm going to put that there like that. Let's turn display properties onto double so we can see both sides, but we know the normals are facing the way we want them to be. I'm going to turn perspective off for a second. I'm going to come in here. Now there's 2 ways you can do this. Okay, you can either turn on collision volume and recalculate your seam, and then you can actually pick a new transpose tool called transpose cloth. So that's B, T, and then C for transpose cloth. And then you could take your mesh, and you can actually wrap this around your character just like this. So you can actually, push it through. Now notice there's clipping and stuff like that, right? So when you get clipping like this, it's important to remember that that's why the inflate is turned on. If we had the inflate at like 0.1, and we're going to back this up a little bit, and then recalculate our scene. If we were to go ahead and run the simulation, say gravity turned on, but gravity is defaulted to up and down from head to toe, but I want the gravity to actually fall on them like this. I can set my scene like this, and then come here to gravity set direction, And then I can go ahead, recalculate, and then run that simulation. And now you can see here, it started to press into the body. So you could start getting effects like this in ZBrush very, very quickly. And this is going to help you get what you want. Then you can fine tune that with the cloth brush. So this is exactly like the easiest way to get stuff like that going. And then again too, like let's say your character, the cape was that superhero style. You know, we need his cape to fly in the wind, right? So just go ahead and woo. That's what happens when you have cloth dynamic turned on. And you have cloth dynamic turned on with the transposed cloth. It's actually going to, in collision volume, it's going to collide with itself, which is really cool. But let's say you have this here, so you can actually come in here now and like set this cape to be pressed against his body. And then you can mask this bottom section off. Say, yep, I want to mask that section off. Surprisingly, that was a straight edge. Come in here, wrap this around his body, turn on symmetry. Come in here. This is obviously really quick, fast, and in a hurry, but hopefully you get the idea of what's happening. And then from here, now we have the cloth. We can actually just affect what's not masked or what is masked. So we can invert the mask here, come up to self-collision, say maybe a collision of 4, recalculate that. And now with that gravity set, run that simulation, and that can fly in that way. Or we can say, make sure we set it in this direction, and they'll fly the other way. So then you can get capes flying in the wind. It's all happening. The zoom lens on my cursor is Shift M. Shift M. That's for the magnifying glass. And that can be adjusted under preferences as well. Magnifying glass, and you can adjust that here to your liking. Shift M. That's how you can turn that on and off. So, shrouds, capes, blankets, all sorts of stuff. Lots of really cool stuff to do with that. Reminds you of accordion, right? Yeah. Okay, let's see. Can I use cloth tools on any object, or does it work only on primitive? You can use it on any object. The thing you want to remember is that the cloth dynamics works really well with low topology, so don't try to use super dense mesh. You know, keep it, I would say, anything under 20,000 active points, which you could see that right up here at the top corner, active points. Anything under 20,000 with a decent computer should be okay. Anything above that might give you complications. I try to work within just a few thousand just because I don't really want my machine to like freak out. And I can get the shapes, and then from there I can smooth stuff out and work with it as it is. We also have a smooth cloth brush. So we hit smooth, and then there's a smooth cloth brush. Hold shift and click that one. The difference between this brush and the other smooth brushes is this one actually affects the edge of an object. So if you want to smooth an edge of an object, that's how that works. With a normal smooth brush, and say, yep, that's fine, that does not work. The edges stay intact. So with the cloth smooth brush, that's how you can really affect your cloth. It's like, I'm smoothing this, but like, no, I want that to smooth. B, S, and then of course B, and then say, yep, that's okay. And then smooth that down, and you can affect the cloth aspect. And you can get that Dracula or Superman or Batman cape within a matter of minutes. Give Pickle Rick a cape. Okay. All right, done. All right, I'm actually literally going to do that. We're going to do that. We're going to do Pickle Rick cape. I'm going to write it down right now before I forget that. We may not get to the cloth today. Okay, Pickle Rick with cape. Done. That's happening. We're doing it. Could you use it as a cloth as a cutting plane? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, you could do that. You might get some weird shapes. I'd be careful of colliding meshes, but yeah, you want to cut this. You want to use this as a cutting shape, right? You have this guy right here. So let's take a basic. Here, let's take a sphere. We're really gonna push it now. This is for you, McBobbles. Here we go, buddy. So we're gonna turn everything else off. I'm gonna come in here. I'm gonna take this cloth. I'm gonna get the normal transpose back. I'm gonna scale this up like this. Okay. That's colliding now. It's colliding everywhere. Scale that up like this. pushing it to its limits. Let's make sure we do something that makes sense here. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this here. I'm going to hit Control F and put this as a cut. This may not be the most ideal situation, but you can do it. So we're going to make sure that the cloth is actually set to negative, live Boolean. And you can see here now it's intersecting. But you're going to want to add thickness, or else you're not really going to be able to utilize that so much. So if we go dynamic, turn on dynamic, and turn on thickness, we can now start to see that cutting edge. And like that, now we have this really nice, interesting shape. And then from here, we just go ahead and what you want to do before you do any Boolean operations with dynamic thickness is make sure you accept that dynamic thickness first so that the geometry is real geometry, money. And then come on in here, go ahead and we're going to go Boolean folder. Here we go. So now we have this operation. Want to know you did it right? Auto groups will give you 2 separate groups. And now we have a really interesting cut and shape. So if you need to actually take a shape that you have a plane that's been manipulated in a very unique way and cut that to get the shape, just make sure that your edges, that your normals are not colliding, and make sure that they are wrapped around correctly. And yes, you can use that as a cutting plane. Yeah, absolutely. You could totally use it as a cookie cutter. Absolutely. 100% hands down. You can also make puzzles out of that. So yeah, you could do all sorts of cool stuff here. What's up, Kairos? Yeah. The Doctor Strange cape. We're gonna mix universes here? Okay, with cape, Doctor Strange cape. Okay. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. Absolutely. You are welcome. You are welcome. So with the cloth, it is best to do a sim on the lowest poly count, then start working on it afterwards. Yes, that first part, absolutely correct. The reason why is because it's utilizing your CPU to go ahead and figure out how to manipulate the geometry. If you increase that geometry at a super high resolution, and when I say super high, I'm thinking between 500,000 to 1 million and up. So between that gap, depending on your machine, like if you have a Threadripper, you're probably going to be okay and you'll probably get away with it. If you're on a laptop, your laptop's going to yell at you, try to become Super Saiyan, and then freak out. So it's probably best not to do super high. Like I said, if you have something that's low poly around like 20,000, that's going to be a good range. Anything higher than that might freak out. Anything lower, this plane that we did was only, before we subdivided it, it was only 1,000 active points. But you could see how much information that I was actually able to get with the character being here. So, you know what I mean? Like, get back this up. Boop, 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 boop. I have solo turned on. So with the character here, let's turn live Boolean off and hide this guy. You can see how much information just with this. If I hit dynamic, D for dynamic on the keyboard and say yes, you can already start to see the wrinkles and deformation of that cape. So you can get a lot of information with very little polys in ZBrush. Dr. Pickle Nick! Oh, absolutely. Okay. All right. Let's move back on to our Pickle rig. Let's go ahead and hit open. Yep, I don't want to save changes to that. And we'll open up our Pickle rig. All right. There's my Pickle rig. Oh man. All right, we got some work to do, so let's get a move in. Okay, first things first, let's get our bone structures going. So this here, I'm actually going to scale this down a little bit more, make that skinnier. And now let's go ahead and let's create, trying to think of how I want to do this. Let's get some basic shapes in here first. So this is our legs basic shape. We'll come up here to the top of the body, and let's just go ahead and do a little, you know what? Let's do this. I'm gonna grab this guy, and I'm gonna delete hidden. Sometimes there's no point in reinventing the wheel. I'm gonna go ahead and practice what I preach. I'm gonna go to Tool. I'm gonna go to the Ryan Kingsley model, double click that. Okay, I'm gonna isolate the solo mode. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab these bones here. So I'm gonna go to poly groups and auto groups. I'm gonna select this guy here, and let's grab the proper select rec, and I'm gonna grab this bone here and this bone here. Now, there's a little bit of anatomical incorrectness, but that's okay. Let's also grab the spinal cord. We're just gonna, let's kit bash a couple things. Why not? Why not? Yeah, perfect. Let's grab what we need and delete hidden. Copy. Come to our pickle. Okay. Let's go to our body. We're going to hit paste. Scale this up. Let's put this back over here. Yeah. Yeah, I'm liking this. Let's grab this guy right here. Let's actually select this section, then hit Control-Shift-A, and then inverse that. I'm going to grab this part here. We're going to set that there for now. And then I'm going to delete the rest of that. I'm going to grab the arm here. Oh, whoops. Oh, that's why. That is why I have symmetry turned on. I didn't mean to have symmetry turned on. Let's mask that off. Let's go ahead and we're going to scale this up a little bit. And then I'm going to hold control and actually inflate these bones. And we're going to manipulate this mesh. Remember what we were talking about earlier about making this a little bit bigger? So we're going to come here. There we go. Yes. Yeah, baby. That's what we're doing. Bone thief. Why not? Why not? Why not? I do what I want. Whatever. I do what I want. Scale this up. And hold control and inflate that. Okay. Yes. Yes. A Pickle Rick. We do what I want. Okay, let's hold Alt and Shift. I'm gonna copy this sucker. Now we will be 3D printing this, okay? So I will definitely be making sure that we'll be breaking some rules, but in the positive way. I'm actually gonna isolate this guy right here, send this home, scale this up. Yes. Right? Absolutely. This. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and split hidden. Split hidden. Take this section right here, sell this out. Just in case I need that extra little bit. Little bits. There we go. Let's grab that guy. Actually, I'm not gonna need that. Maybe I'll need that one. Nope. Delete hidden. Not split hidden this time. Delete hidden. And we want to 3D print this. So actually, let's do this. Let's take that one little bit that we have. Okay. We'll go ahead and delete. Grab this guy. No, that guy. Reset, reset. Scale this up. Come on up. And now we're going to do our famous control drag. So I'm actually going to push this in a little bit. Going to scale this. Come down here. And then we're going to hold control and drag out. Reshape that. Okay, we're going to manipulate this however we want. Do it a couple more times. Una más. There you go, something like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to mask this section off here. Invert this. I'm actually going to smooth these down. Because those won't print well, I guarantee it. I'm going to go ahead and hit auto groups. This part's important. The auto group part, because we're going to go to geometry. We're going to go to Dynamesh. We're going to turn on groups, turn off smooth or blur. And I'm actually going to kick this up at a super high resolution of 500. And I'm going to hit Dynamesh. That's going to give me some decent mesh. I'll do a light smooth. Blend those in. And I'm actually going to drop the resolution by Z-remeshing it. It was decimated, so Z-remeshing was not going to be a good thing. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn on Move Infinite. I'm going to turn on Backface. We're going to thicken up these walls a little bit. Just like that. Move Infinite does both sides equally. Re-Dynamesh that. And then we're going to go to Geometry, Z-remesher, Keep Groups, Adapt. Yeah, that's fine. We have... Okay, and then let's go, let's start with 10, smooth groups off, and Z-remesh. Yes, yeah, there are dragon bones in the light box. Yep. All right, so if we hit Shift F, we have some decent Z-remeshing happening, and we can actually cut that in half. One more time. Perfect. All right. Bring that in just a little bit. And now we're going to take this guy. Mask that off. Come here. Rainbow spinal cord. Yeah, that's right. And we'll make sure we come up here just a little bit to get the brain part done. Yep, and then let's go ahead, polygroup, auto groups. There we go. And if we want to manipulate each one of these individually, we can either use the Move Topological, which is a really fun brush that already is set up to manipulate one polygroup at a time. Or what we could do is if we had our own custom move brush, like the Move Infinite, we can actually adjust the topological by going to Brush, Auto-masking Topological, and then we can manipulate just the one. So it's completely up to you how you want to do that. That is the way. All right. Go ahead and smooth that part down just a little bit. Perfect. Okay. I'll take these bones. Go ahead and mirror, and actually before we mirror and weld it, let's go to groups, auto groups here, and mirror and weld. Okay. And we're going to do the exact same thing we're going to do here. So we're going to go to Dynamesh, because again, this is super low resolution, decimated, and that's not going to work for us. So we're going to turn on groups, turn off blur just like before, something that's a little higher than you would normally go, and Dynamesh that. And now that mesh is a little bit easier to work with. We can turn on symmetry, make sure just kind of smooth some of those imperfections that don't look normal or natural. And then go ahead and re-Dynamesh that. There we go. Smooth all this down. I have the smooth cloth brush. That's not helping me whatsoever. So let's do the normal smooth brush. There we go. One more time. And now we're going to Z-remesh, keep groups. Oh, no, I didn't mean to do that. I hit Z-remesh first. Z-remesh, keep groups, smooth groups down, count to 15, adapt turns on, symmetry is turned on, bada bing, bada boom, we be done. I almost never want blur, absolutely. Is there a way to make blur default to off? Yes. If you never want blur, whatever you do to this menu here, just go ahead and save your UI out. So a lot of times, like if I want this crease menu open, and this happens to me all the time when I'm creating custom UI or I'm creating you know, little changes and stuff like that. Whatever you want adjusted, you should be able to come here, turn smooth groups off, and then when you go under your config and then you save your UI and store your config, all right, that should automatically recognize those changes. I'm pretty sure, so give that a go, see if that works. So in that case, you'd be turning blur off. Because I have a few menus that pop up normally that I don't necessarily, that I use all the time that don't start that way. So that's the way to do it. The other thing you could do too, actually, there's a plugin. Do I have it installed? Yeah, Z Startup Utility. If you have Z Startup Utility, you can actually install this plugin. It's free. Then you can set a bunch of this stuff up here and install custom startup. Rotate Y on. You can have that on, right? Because here we always have X, Y, and Z. So you'd actually, that would default to here. And then you save that UI. Store, or in that case here, you just come up here to Start Utility and say Install Custom Startup. You actually can do that too with a file that you have, which we created an Ask ZBrush about as well. And since we're on the topic of Ask ZBrush UI Startup, I actually created that. Where was it? I did that. Did it like a month ago. Find it real fast. Playlist. Ask ZBrush. Auto load projects. So give that a whirl. Yeah, no problem. What's the difference between move and move topological? So move topological is allows you to move different meshes with different polygroups without manipulating the other. So for example, I have these two polygroups and I just want to move this guy right here and I don't want to shrink my brush size down because that's not what I want. I want to literally just move this one section here. But if I have just regular move turned on, I'm going to get this, right? So move topological allows you to grab the mesh that you want and manipulate the mesh you want, even though my brush size is covering both of those. The one you touch is the one you move. And that's a really helpful move if you're trying to get fine-tuned stuff, and especially if you're used to working with big brushes. You know, why should you have to scale that down or select that, mask that section off, etc., etc. If you want something, you want an item with glass? You mean in like the render? If you want something with glass, actually I have the okay, let me save this one more time. These are great questions, everybody. Awesome questions. So if you want something with glass, we actually have a material that will do that fairly well. So let's say, okay, these are actually feet here real quick. Boop. Okay. So if you would like something with like glass effect, the glass effect happens within the render itself. So if let's insert a cylinder like this, we'll solo this out. And I'm going to go ahead and actually just do something like this, 90 degrees. And let's use the ZModeler brush to insert an edge right about here. And we'll mirror and weld this on the Z axis. Boop. So that we have something like this. Let's actually send this. Is this home? It is home. Great. So now I have this spot here, and I'm just going to go ahead and select this section. And I'm going to QMesh this, and I'm going to pop a hole all the way in the back, like this. And I'll squeeze this in. And essentially, you're like, okay, I want a piece of glass in the middle of this, right? So what we can do is we can insert another object. So we have another cylinder here. We scale this down. Just turn everything else off except for what we want. Okay, so we scale this up and then we shrink this down. So we have some collision. I want the centerpiece to be glass, or at least the render through. So what you'll do is you'll set your material to something like reflected map 1 or reflected map 2. It's up to you which one you want to use. And you're going to go up to the top and turn on your material. You can even affect a color if you want. So let's say you want that glass to be kind of blue. And we just make sure that mRGB is turned on. And we fill that in at 100%. And I'm going to make this other material right here a kind of white material with a basic material. And I'm going to go ahead and, oh my gosh, color and fill object. There we go. So now when you go ahead and hit render, this doesn't really look like glass, right? Well, if we come down to the very bottom of our tool palette and we go under display properties, we have BPR settings. And we have this BPR transparent shading. This is what you're going to want. We're going to turn this on, and you're going to get a pop-up, and the pop-up's going to say, hey, you're going to want to turn on transparent in the render settings. That's how this is going to work. So if you say no, and you go render, it's not going to really do a whole lot. So you got to make sure that you go to render, go up to render properties, and you're going to turn on transparent. And that transparency is what's going to give you that effect. And now, of course, I'm on the wrong subtool, so I'm going to select this one. There we go. Let's turn that on again. Let's go to render, transparent, turn that on. And now I can see through this. And now I can adjust the visibility. I can adjust the shadows that engage with that. And you can already see visibility. Make it a little cloudier. Visibility, super shiny, right? And then you can even blend in some material settings. So you can get that see-through effect just by using that. Pickle Rick! QMesh is amazing! Hello, hello. Yep, it is, absolutely. QMesh is way better than normal extrude. Hello, hello. Welcome in, welcome in. Broke D Gaming. Don't fly. Let's see. Boop. Okay. All right. Perfect. Why would I say it's better than normal extrude? I would say it's better than normal extrude because if we go ahead and we have two walls right here, and I want to extrude this one part right here. With QMesh, if I go ahead and hover over this edge, over this face, and I have normal extrude, and then I say, okay, yeah, all my polygroups, when I start to push this in, notice here that there is a now thin wall that is actually, there's a thin wall that's happening here, and I don't like that. What QMesh does is QMesh actually detects the faces and the edges, and it allows me to manipulate and adjust to that. So I can actually make all these different edges. Now, of course, I have all these edges here, so let's actually come through. I'm going to delete all of these edges one by one, really slowly. They have the anticipation, but it recognizes real quickly the edge loops involved. And if you have an even amount of edge loops from one side to another, that's how you can actually pop a hole from one backside of the other, from one face to the other face of it. It also, what's really cool is, let's say we go ahead and we extrude these two objects out. Boop. And then I'm going to go ahead and mask this off, and I'm going to take slice curve and add a custom edge loop right there. Now when I use QMesh on this piece, it's actually going to detect this edge. Boop. And because it detected that edge, I can actually work off of that edge in particular. Come here, grab this one. You see, it starts recognizing all those different spots. So you can create really neat shapes really fast by just having that feature happen. So the edge detection and the face detection is by far some of the coolest stuff. So, boop. So it's different. Like I said, here, if I go to extrude on this face and I push through, it's going to give me inverted normals, and it's not going to detect that other edge. But here, if I have QMesh, once again, I'm like, yeah, I want to cut that. Boom, that's cut. That's done. And I can make faster custom shapes real quick, fast and in a hurry. Yeah, you could do a whole lot with it. So that one ability, it supersedes extrude, in my opinion. But don't get me wrong, there are places and times when you want extrude. And when you want extrude, extrude. But just note that it's not the extrude. QMesh is just more powerful in the application you can get here, in my opinion. But I mean, I still use extrude from time to time. Hopefully that covers the glass part as well. All speed, baby. Let's see. Hold on. Hello, hello. Okay. RoKD Gaming. What's your question? Did I miss your question? Just remember, guys, too, I try to take everybody's questions as much as possible. I can only read so fast, so please bear with me if I am going fast, quick, and in a hurry. But how can I change the color of the UI? Oh, that's... Hold on one second. I want to make sure... I will do that one second. I want to make sure I hit this other... There's a couple questions here. Okay. Let me change the color UI, and then Diego, I see your question. When I use damn standard plus alpha 58, it makes my mesh look weird, kind of low poly, even though it has 2 million. How can I fix that? Okay, so Diego, I'll get to that question. RoKD, please help. I see that, but I've lost the context in which you're asking help. So if you could ask the question, I will get to it after the UI question. So I'm sorry, after the poly question. So we're going to go UI question, then the alpha question, and then we'll hit the other one. So with the UI color, that's easy. Just go up to preferences, go up to, that's not it, Ian. Go up to eye colors, and here are your default colors. And what you could do from there is you can actually say, okay, I'm going to want this to be green, so change your color here in your scene to green. Hit V to switch that out. I don't know what I just hit there. And I'm going to say, we're going to go green and a kind of yellow blend, right? So I have these green and this yellow blend. Go up to preferences. We can dock this by clicking that little wheel icon and clicking it to the left or to the right, whichever you would like. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this right here. If we notice here, push button, if we hold control over this swatch color, it'll actually tell you what the swatch color is going to be affecting. So I can click and press and hold and say that this will be the top part of the button. I want that to be green, and I want this one to be yellow. And that looks really, really, really hideous. So I'm going to make this one yellow, and I'm going to make this one green. And now I have this kind of greenish UI with a yellow tint. Blah, blah, blah. And then with the buttons, the same thing. The button slider right underneath that, those are your button colors. So you can go ahead and say, I'm going to want something really awesome, like pink. I'm going to make this a pink. You come through here, and you just start making your buttons pink. Now you got green and pink. Kind of like that, actually. So that's how you change your UI. And then, of course, too, you have all these other presets up here. If you go up to the very top right-hand side of it, you have load next user interface, and ZBrush ships with, I think, 9, or it ships with a few different ones, so you can toggle through there. But once you've added your colors, just go to preference and then go up to config and store your UI, save your UI for future use, and you are good to go. Now we're going to work with this like this. It's the Pickle Rick theme, right? So, boop. There we go. we got this kind of oh, hey, actually, I think this might be the right color for the screen. So let's go ahead and fill this color. RGB, full 100%. Boom. Okay. We'll keep that color. And actually, for these bones, let's make this bone kind of an off-white. So let's already get some color happening here. Let's actually plop that here. Fill object. Fill object. Okay. And let's fill object and turn that on. Yeah, perfect. And we're going to go ahead and save this project. And I'm also going to save... We'll save the ZTL as well. Okay. So for the Dynamesh question, which was going back up to the top, views DM Standard Plus with Alpha 58. So... DM Standard, with the alpha 58 right here. Let's go ahead and grab this. And even though your object has 2 million, so we're going to go up to 2 million. Actually, we'll go up to 1.6. You're getting some weird cuts. Okay, so I'm going to show you something real quick, and it might be useful. This is Dynameshed. I'm going to show you something that might help you out here too. And I'm going to show you on an empty sphere. So first things first, I don't need this anymore. This is just going to take way too much space up in my project. This was my environment thing, so we can delete that. And this was my bone mesh, delete all that. Okay, so we're just going to take a basic cylinder. So I'm going to insert a cylinder here, insert cylinder 3D. I'm going to hit K. And I want to show something real quick that might actually help you out just a little bit on how to get that happening, especially if you're saying that your mesh is up to 2 million, but it's actually looking kind of low poly. And something to note too is, so the way ZBrush is going to capture information is the points, the contact between these 4 points. Let's go ZModeler here. These 4 points right here in the middle, that vertice, that's actually going to be capturing your detail. Everything in between is not space that can be captured. So when you have something that's low, like here, and you have your damn standard, everything that gets affected as you scrub through it is just going to be those points. So in this case, for example, if we were to go ahead and go to edge loop and delete loops, and then I'm going to go ahead and subdivide a few times, notice here that I only have technically 1, 2 supporting edge loops between this middle section. So even though I've subdivided and I've come up, when I start coming through here, this looks completely low resolution. And this is actually, and it's not kind of giving me what I want. So even at a higher resolution, you can see here it looks really pixelated and really nasty. And that's just because there's still not enough edge loops and vertices to capture the information correctly. So to basically fix this, what you would want to do, I'm going to back up in time a little bit, here is add in your own edge loop. So if you have a low resolution mesh, or you're working with some sort of custom built Dynamesh and it's still not giving it to you, ZRemesh it and get the information back in here. And on that low resolution, the spot you really want to add resolution, insert some more edge loops. And here, I'm just going to add a ton. I'm going to add a ton here. Watch this. This whole mesh, by default, right now, is about 100 points. I'm going to just crank this up a lot. I'm going to hit 1 to repeat that action and crash ZBrush. Never mind. 1 second. There goes Ian breaking stuff again. He did it. He broke it. Okay. 1 second, let's come back here. Yeah, good job, Ian. You're amazing. You're a star. You're a wonderful dude. All right, let's come back up here real quick. Let's come back up here. I just pushed it to the limits. Anyway, so let's come back up here. Let's go to edge loop, and let's go to delete loops, ZRemesh. Okay, it's just to get the point home here. Don't do what I did just now. So we're going to add a bunch of edge loops. So now this is 10,000 edge loops, okay? So when I were to start subdividing this up, I'm only going to subdivide this up to under a mil. So this is 670. And now I'm going to use that damn standard with alpha 58, which is right here. And at 670 resolution, we are actually getting a lot better than what we were getting at that 2 million mark. So if I subdivide up a little bit more, you can see here, let's change the material. You can see here that at the 2 million mark, it looks a lot better. And just because there's a lot more information that the model has in order to capture that detail. So, but also too, just keep in mind that this alpha is very sharp. And because this alpha is very sharp, meaning it has no gradient, it's not going to look its best. If you try something like alpha 6 on the same geometry, and you'll notice here that it's looking a little bit better. Okay, maybe not that way. But when coming down this way too, notice if we come back to the beginning, we still have a very low resolution of the supporting edge loops around. Up and down, it's really nice, but around, it's not as nice. So It's all in how the mesh is built and how the vertices are going to help you capture that information. Polypaint would still capture fairly well. So if I had a Polypaint brush, so BPA, thank you, Ian. And I'm going to go ahead and fill this color. So we're going to go color, fill object, pick a red. Like, there's enough information that Polypaint's going to be really nice. But for geometry level, it may not be so nice. So just go ahead and make sure that you kind of add in your own edge loops, or maybe kick it up. Maybe you're trying something that's too fine a detail that you actually need to kick it up to maybe more like 10 million, and then you'll actually get something that's a lot cleaner. So depending on what you're trying to do, this will actually give you a little bit better result. But I always, on my base meshes, I try my best to add in a lot of edge loops that if I don't want my model to go too high, and that gives me a lot of support. Cyberpunk colors, amazing. Yeah, then I crashed it. Boop, boop, boop. Let's see here. I don't know what QMesh stands for, actually. I'll have to ask. Quad, I think. If I had to guess, I would guess quad. Yeah. The whole thing is a trap prank. Right? All right, you got to bounce. Catch you later. No worries, B. Thanks for joining. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and open up the project. No. Let's go back to my Pickle Rick project. Is there a way to prevent ZBrush from rounding or removing edges like planes and subtools? Yes, there is, actually. So a way to do that... Oh, I got to delete all this stuff again. A way to do that is actually to tell it to detect edges, and you can actually crease your edges too. But if you're working with an object that maybe is like Dynameshed, then pinch some edges and tell it to detect. But here, let's come here real fast. Let's go ahead and hit save real quick. So if you have something like this cube here, I'm gonna go ahead and let's see here. Let's solo this out. I'm trying to think the best way I want to do this to demonstrate. We solo this out, and then we go ahead and do polygroups, and then we do group by normals, and then I'm gonna subdivide. I'm actually gonna Dynamesh this real quick. Let's do the Dynamesh situation. Go pretty high, blur, turn that on. Okay, so you want to ZBrush this, but you don't want to have the edges round out so much. The first thing too is always know if you're ZBrushing something, there's always going to be a chance that you'll get a little subtle roundness. So I like to go ahead and hold Control at the top of our timeline and timestamp a history point. But to get something like this ZBrush without the edges going too much, what you could do is if you have different poly faces like this, the easiest way is to go to crease and crease polygroups. That's going to be very, very helpful. If you don't have the ability to do that, but you do have obvious edges, I'll back that up for a second. If you go under ZBrush, you have this feature called Detect Edges and Keep Groups, and you can turn these smooth groups down to 0. And then when you go ahead and ZBrush, I'm going to do a ZBrush of 15, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit ZBrush. I have a history state that's always going to be there, but I'm telling ZBrush, do me a favor, make sure Detect Edges are on, and I want my groups to be kept. If you don't have any groups to be kept, or you're trying to do auto groups or group by normals and it's not giving the results that you want, but you still have a nice edge, then you're going to want to put Detect Edges on. If you can crease your polygroups, that's going to help you get a little bit more finer control. But with the bare limitations, and this is a pretty dense model, let's let it think, and then we'll have it go through and show you the results we can get. And sometimes it's helpful to ZBrush a ZBrush one more time just to see if it gives you a better result. Because sometimes it's gonna make its calculations and it's the best determination, and then you can click same and run it again. And a lot of times that works out a little bit of the wrinkles. Freeze borders can help as well, yeah. I did a super dense mesh, so let's see how well it thinks. I only speak English, but I use Google Translate, so give me 1 second, and I can run through Google Translate. The legs will be one piece. More than likely with 3D printing, this piece, the legs will be one piece, yes. So just so everybody knows too, I used to stream at noon to 2, but we're going to start streaming at this time, which is 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So coming through, this will be the normal time moving forward. It's just a nice adjustment, but this is where we're going to be. So definitely mark it. This is where we'll be all the time moving forward. And hopefully, it seems like a good time for a lot of people. Aram, what's up, Ian? Can you show how to use Boolean to merge and stitch subtools? Yes, Aram, I did see you. How you doing? Right after this, we can do that. Ian's back to the cylinder welder. Let's go. Absolutely. All right, so ZBrush's thinking. This was actually a pretty big test. This was 2.5, and it did okay. So let's actually do half, and let's see if we can get some better edges here. That was pretty high mesh. But even still here, this is where project history is going to be your friend, because you're going to be able to tell it to recapture that information with some subdivisions and get a cleaner result if you want. Let's actually come back. This mesh is just way too much. Let's actually back this down just a little bit, smooth that. Let's drop this down a little bit more. Something like that. Let's go to ZBrush. Let's try that one more time. And sometimes too, you're going to run into the issue where your mesh is too high, or you're not actually giving the ZModeler enough information for it to run its course. So I always stress, play around with these sliders and see what you have that's going to give you your best results. But you can overload. You can tell it, oh, this is way too much. Let's see, let it think. It's actually thinking a little bit faster. But yeah, but that's why all of these are here. Popcorn is waiting for the results. What is going to happen next time on Dragon Ball? This is actually being some pretty nice cheese grade. So let's troubleshoot this a little bit. Let's say, I'm going to just turn off keep groups. I'm going to say detect edges. And we'll try freeze border next. But this is what even I do. Sometimes it's just dependent on mesh, and the mesh is like, well, I don't want to do it for you. So we get some different. Adapt is going to be your best friend too. Like I have adapt turned off. Let's turn adapt back on. And now, this is a riveting stream. ZBrush a cube. Call it a day. But again, I'm going to default right back to this project history, and I'll show you why here in a second. Boom, 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 boom. There's any 2 in ZModeler that lets us make an edge loop selection. Skim it, for example, select 2, 3 faces. Hold on 1 second. Is there any tool in ZModeler that lets us make a loop selection by selecting some faces? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Let's actually go in half. This actually looks pretty nice. Yeah, this is actually looking pretty nice. Okay, so something low like this. We're gonna go lower. So we have some interesting, our edges here. But if we subdivide a couple times, and then we're gonna go to project. So let's go to subtool, project, and project history. That's going to help push your mesh back, giving you those sharp edges, which is always the way I default. So, but definitely try freeze borders. I don't want to be, we're not going to ZBrush a cube this whole time, but that's the way I would always approach it, and then move from there. Hey, Kairos is back. Okay. So the tool for, let's actually use this cube since we have it here. So yeah, let's go here. Let's go to delete tire. So you want to make a selection of an edge loop. If I understand the question right, is the tool that makes us make a loop selection by skipping some faces. Yeah. So for example, this right here, I'm going to zoom in, this loop right here. Oops. I'm going to hover over this guy right here, okay? And I'm actually going to go to Poly Group, and I'm going to make these selections right here, right? If we hover over a face now, and we go to Poly Group, there's this little thing down here. Let's go to Poly Group All, and let's go to Checker. And if I click this one time, that's going to skip faces. And if you have an even amount of faces, it's going to skip. Now, I don't have an even amount of faces here, but even if we had just one loop and we touch that, it's going to skip over. And like I said, if you had the true amount, so let's actually come here. Let me show you the real cube, the cube that is the most definite, interesting cube of all time. So if we had this guy right here, and then I hover over here and then do a checker, it's going to evenly check each and every one. So you can skip, and now you have these guys. So now you can come here, Polygroup All, QMesh, and Polygroup All, QMesh, boom. And now you can do something like that. So Andre, that would be the way, if you wanted to make a selection on a loop that and you skip some faces, that's the way you can do that. The other way to do it too is like if you only need a few faces, like let's say I need all of this to be, I need this one, and this one, then holding Alt and tapping on a face is going to let me select custom. And then as you're selecting this out, tap Alt, and that's going to give you different polygroup colors. So a few different ways that you can do that. Absolutely. How can you make a hard surface out of a torso? I'm not a hard surface expert that would specialize in like animal, like mechanical engineering and stuff. But what I would say is make the, like once you have the torso there, if you wanted to add any type of gears or something like that, you actually have a, if we go to IMM brush, we actually have a steam gear section right here. So I would take whatever mesh you have started and start placing your gears. You also do have some industrial parts up here at the top. We also have, IMM, we also have space primitives, we also have machine parts. So I would say start with these, and then if you have your torso, which I mean we're going to be doing some hard surface stuff with this Pickle Rick as we sculpt through. Mind you, I'm probably going to do some more sculpting off stream just because we definitely answer a lot of questions while we're here. What I would say is once you have something like this, like let's say I wanted to add this, what do I want to add? Oh, okay, I want to add this nut right here to the top here. Now you have this mesh here. You could just start placing these spots here and manipulate them where you need them to be. Scale this up. Right, and if we hit local sim, that's over here, and start scaling, it's going to scale uniform to the part itself. So you can start placing the stuff here, and then you can actually switch out different components. So you have all of these brushes, and if you're not sure what actually resides in these IMM brushes, so go ahead and hit B and then I for IMM, and let's say you're in this Boolean tab, and you're like, okay, up here at the top there's way too much stuff, and I can't scroll through. If you click here, I'm like, I don't know. If you hit M on the keyboard, that's going to give you an indication of everything that's here with an alphabetical order. So you can say, oh, so you can just load a brush real quick. So you can hit B, I, and then you can say, okay, what's in this spaceship one here? It'll load up, and then you go ahead and hit M, and now you could see everything that's here. And you can be like, oh, okay, I really want this guy. So you go ahead and select that guy, and now you can drag that shape out. And then you're like, oh, what's the next one? That one. And you can start building from there. So hopefully that answers your question. But that's where I would start. Get your organic shape roughly worked out, and then just start playing with these brushes, get your components. You're absolutely welcome. Do I have a favorite game soundtrack? Ooh, yeah, actually, I would say Borderlands. Borderlands is one of my favorite game soundtracks. Every time a Borderlands games come out, it is money. The music is always just so impressive. Unravel is a sneaky, awesome game soundtrack? Really? Okay. All right, I'll have to check that one out. Okay, what do we got here? We only have a couple more minutes left, but if anybody has any last-minute questions, feel free to let me know. I'm going to go ahead and continue blocking this guy out, but let's get some interesting shapes. I do want to showcase one other feature here real quick that I think some might have forgotten, and that is a mesh balloon. Mesh balloon is really great when you're trying to actually get some sort of geometry worked out. So let's actually grab this guy and this guy, mask this section off. I'm going to move this forward just a bit. So with balloon mesh, what we can do is we can actually take a shape, hold control, and drag out and get something that was usable for what we want. And I'm going to want these trapezius muscles back here. So I'm going to go ahead and block this out. Now, of course, too, like we had said before, if we block something out like this, and it's kind of not embedding the way we want, we can go up to Picker, hold control to select the mesh, and we're going to do continuous. And then I'm going to go ahead and drag this shape out. And now that's going to continuously identify each and every one. I'm now going to go ahead and take move, and we're going to smooth this down a little bit, and we'll start getting this shape worked up. Yeah, Tokyo Ghoul. Ooh, yeah, that's a great one too. Journey is great as well. Journey is always great. Yeah, I love Final Fantasy VI soundtrack. Ooh, you know what? Going back, you know what? Final Fantasy IX and Final Fantasy X, probably some of my favorite of that genre. Final Fantasy VI was also great. Last question, you promise? Okay, all right, I'm going to hold you to it. Why, when I dynamesh a mesh without symmetry, like walking the dog, and the mesh is full of holes? Ooh, interesting. Okay. So there is a few reasons why that actually might happen. And sometimes it's kind of difficult to pinpoint exactly what is happening there. However, I'm going to go ahead and say fill that to get that kind of color. And let me finish this thought real quick, and let me show you a little cool trick that I think might help you out. We're going to go here to move. And what more likely is happening is that the mesh integrity itself is just off. And you can adjust that. You can actually fix that. So let's go ahead and I'm just gonna go ahead real fast. I want to manipulate this guy here. I'm gonna split this off, split hidden. So what you could do, I'm gonna take these trapezius muscles here real fast, and I'm gonna hit Dynamesh. Okay, let's go to geometry. Let's go to Dynamesh, and I'm gonna go ahead and Dynamesh. Now the first thing that might happen is that you're hitting Dynamesh and the resolution is a bit low. So the first thing I recommend that you do before you Dynamesh anything is hover over this picker, click and drag, and this will update and find the densest spot on your mesh. The densest spot on your mesh is going to tell you over here on the resolution slider, you know, how heavy that actually is. And it's going to give you a starting spot. So no longer do you have to guess how thick or thin something is. If you were to go ahead and hit Dynamesh randomly, and then your mesh gets holes, you could have inverted normals, you could have hitting mesh, you could have little holes that you just weren't aware of, and now they're showing up. And the resolution, the lower the resolution is, obviously the more sloppier, not sloppier, but the lower the resolution it is, the easier it's going to be for your mesh to weld. And the higher the resolution, the denser your mesh is going to be, but the spacing between is not going to weld as much. So if there are little holes or inverted normals when you Dynamesh, it could cause that. It can cause kind of those holes to appear. So what you could do is you could go down to mesh integrity and check your mesh integrity. And that's usually what I recommend. If you Dynamesh and then the holes pop, Control Z and then check your mesh integrity. And more than likely, 9 times out of 10, it's gonna say there are flipped normals, or there are 5 or 6 faces. I've had a mesh have 20 something faces that were inverted, and Dynamesh just couldn't calculate that. So hit check mesh integrity, and if it pops up with an error, say fix mesh integrity, and then go back to Dynamesh and re-Dynamesh that, and then your mesh should actually work itself out. If it's still not, maybe drop the resolution down a little bit and then run a lower resolution Dynamesh and see if that fixes. And that's the same thing with the Swiss cheese. You get that Swiss cheese effect, come back and check your mesh integrity and then fix it. And that should help out a lot. Yeah. Right? Cool. Okay, so that is about gonna wrap it up today. We had a lot of great questions. So thank you guys for showing up and bringing your questions. We're gonna be continuing this character next week. I might do a little bit more of the blockout just because I didn't get as far as I wanted to today, but hopefully we showed a lot of really cool tips and tricks. We had a lot of great questions. So yeah, this glove is really cool. I really like it. If you guys like the glove I'm wearing, go to artistglove.com. These gloves are super comfortable and really, really nice. So anyway, that's going to cover it for today. Everybody have a great one. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Thank you. I could pay you with pizza, but I can't right now. All right. Well, you know, there might be a day I'm going to be hungry. I'm just kidding. Don't worry about it. All right, everybody. I want you all to have a fantastic day, and we'll catch you later. Bye for now. Remember, ask ZBrush, right? And I was just saying bye, but also Wednesday, 9 a.m. to 11. Okay, now I'm going to go for real. All right, see you guys later. Bye.